The enormous success of Fonen's life, which sold more than 29,000 copies, encouraged the author to self-publish in Picton The Young Hussar in 1890, a rollicking tale in the style of Charles Lever. In the novel, in traveling through the American slave states before the Civil War, the genteel Irish hero is saved from a degenerate American mob by appealing to the Irish patriotism of a crowd that is gathered to watch the fun. Fonen contrasts British civilization of middle-class Ireland and Canada with the debased and chaotic state of American culture, and he includes reference to the negative effects of American influence on Canadian political life. The third Irish-related novel to survive in this collection is the Catholic priest J.A. O'Reilly's The Last Sentinel, published in London by Elliot Stock in 1916 and probably acquired by Edward Mooney while overseas. This episodic novel deals with the Newfoundland Irish and a Newfoundland election, stressing both the British identity and the Irish cultural nationalism and transatlantic sentiment of the Newfoundland Irish community. In general, the novel suggests that Edward Mooney's interests were historical rather than literary, and aside from a prize volume of the poems of Alexander Pope, none of the surviving volumes document strong literary interests. Now, the next section is about economy and politics in the Mooney Library. Edward Mooney's military experiences and interests are revealed in several volumes associated with his collection. He owned a copy of John A. Macdonald's, not the Prime Minister, another fellow. He owned a copy of John A. Macdonald's Troublous Times in Canada, a history of the Fenian raids of 1866 and 70, published in Toronto in 1910 by the ephemeral W.S. Johnson House. He read and lightly annotated Charles Saraly's The Anglo-German Problem, a London imprint of Thomas Nelson, issued in 1912. And later he also read Reginald Escher's sympathetic account of the tragedy of Lord Kitchener, published by John Murray in 1921. A copy of Noah Brooks' Short Studies in Party Politics also was added to his library before the war. It was published by Charles Scribner in 1895. Edward was keenly interested in economics and was a committed social democrat. Of special interest is a copy of socialist Carroll D. Wright's The Battles of Labor, produced in Philadelphia by the George W. Jacobs Press, collecting the 1906 William Levi Bowl Lectures, a series that included Jacob Riis, Lyman Abbott, and Booker T. Washington. In 1923, Edward annotated the entire text and clearly read it with close attention. On the inside front cover of the book, Mooney is written in an emphatic hand, and I think I have an image of that up here. Read page 167. So, of course, I was quick to do so. The passage marked by Mooney reads, "The change gradually came to the world from militancy to industrialism, not the struggle for existence, but the struggle for subsistence. Then when the struggle for subsistence ceased, primarily by doing away with the old iron law of wages, the struggle was broadened to that for some of the aesthetic potentialities of life, some of those things which mean culture in some degree, and those attributes of man which are necessary for becoming not only an economic, but a social and political factor. Of all the books in the collection, Wright's The Battles of Labor is the one most distinctly recording Edward Mooney's thought and character. His marginalia reveal that his experiences in the construction industry and in the war both contributed to political opinions of the mature man. And Mooney combines a strong Canadian imperial nationalism with an equally strong and even radical Fabian socialist views, a subject that clearly interested him. Now, as a Shavian, I'm gratified to be able to say that another Mooney book on economics relevant, both in documenting the role of American publishing in the distribution of British print in Canada, and also as further indication of social democratic tendencies in Edward Mooney's thinking, is Fabian Essays on Socialism, a collection of essays edited by George Bernard Shaw. In conclusion, perhaps the most unusual feature of the early portion of the Mooney family library is that it documents the reading of a working-class immigrant Irish family in Victorian Canada. Although the surviving remnant of the collection is not extensive, those books that do remain explicitly reveal the phases of sentiment of an Irish family gradually being transformed and assimilated into Canadians. The cache of mid-century Irish materials evidences strong Irish cultural nationalist feeling and an intellectual curiosity that stands against the racist stereotypes of the anti-Irish bigots of the time. The books also document the family's persistent interest and identification with Thomas D'Arcy McGee at a time when revolutionary nationalists were calling for, and possibly planning, his assassination as a traitor to the Republican cause. Although some of the early books in the collection would fit comfortably into a militant Republican's library, subsequent acquisitions are non-sectarian and suggest that pro-imperialist print culture, disseminated to reinforce the general Canadian consensus of the time, was accepted and adopted by later members of the family. But if the Moonies had become Canadian imperialists, they remained Catholics in matter of religion and on the left in matters of economics. And they serve as good examples of what George Grant, Yad Horowitz, Charles Taylor, and others have called red Tories. Despite this, or rather in addition to this, Edward Mooney's careful preservation and sustained interest in his grandfather's Irish books, elaborately signed in youth and decorated with his bookplate in prosperous maturity, demonstrates that the process of assimilation did not completely efface his Irish identity, and a love of things Irish persisted throughout a varied and storied life. Thank you.